Sometimes help comes when you least expect it. I whispered to myself as I slammed the brakes, my hands slick on the steering wheel of my sleek black SUV. Rain pelted the windshield like a drumline gone mad, each drop splattering in patterns that blurred the city lights into streaks of gold and red. My engine had coughed one last desperate wheeze before giving up entirely, steam rising from the hood in spirals that vanished into the stormy night. I stepped out, shaking, leather jacket soaked through, and cursed under my breath, glancing down the empty street for any sign of assistance. That's when I saw her, a figure with a worn stroller, darting toward me through the puddles, her determination cutting through the chaos. Clara Bennett, her brown coat plastered to her frame, knelt by my car, hands working quickly over the engine, inspecting, twisting, muttering to herself. I leaned against the fender, muscles taut, every sense alert as the wind and rain whipped around us, her focus unwavering despite the storm. A horn blared somewhere blocks away, but here, in this moment, time slowed. Only her and the silent hum of possibility existed. "Are you okay?" she asked, voice steady yet edged with concern. I wanted to answer, wanted to assert control, but the words got caught in my throat. Instead, I watched the way her fingers moved, deft, precise, like she'd done this countless times before, and for a fleeting second, I forgot the city outside, the world I ruled. My pulse raced in response to hers, subtle yet insistent, a rhythm that spoke louder than words. Then a flicker of movement caught my eye, shadows skimming across the wet asphalt, distant yet approaching. Clara's head snapped up, eyes wide, and without hesitation, she grasped my arm, grounding me. Her touch was firm, an unspoken declaration that she wouldn't let me fall alone, and in that instant, something shifted, my attention, my calculation, my usual control over every scenario faltered. I realized then that help wasn't just in the act, it was in the courage behind it, and this woman, this stranger, was rewriting the rules I had lived by for decades. The engine remained silent, the rain relentless, and I felt the weight of her gaze, unwavering and searching. I spoke finally, voice low but steady. "You've changed the night, maybe more than you know." She didn't smile, didn't answer, just nodded, eyes flicking back to the darkened street, sensing the unseen currents of tension that always followed me. A flash of lightning lit her determined face, raindrops clinging to her hair, and I caught the exact moment I realized our worlds, so different, had collided in a way neither of us could ignore. The city hummed around us, distant and irrelevant, and I knew the night wasn't over. It had only begun. The rain continued to drum against the hood of Nathan Blackwell's SUV as Clara Bennett stepped back, wiping her hands on the hem of her soaked coat. The streetlights reflected in puddles around her, shimmering like fractured mirrors, and for a moment the city seemed to hold its breath. Nathan's gaze followed every movement she made, noting the steady rhythm of her breathing, the way her brown hair clung to her damp face, the resilience in her eyes that seemed to challenge the storm itself. "I can call a tow," she said, her voice calm but assertive. "They will get you moving in 30 minutes or less." He did not respond immediately, simply observed her, the faintest twitch at the corner of his mouth betraying his appreciation. The silence was electric, filled with unspoken thoughts and the sound of rain cascading over asphalt. Clara knelt once more, checking the connections under the hood, her hands skilled and precise despite the chill in the air. Nathan stepped closer, leather creaking softly under the weight of his posture, careful not to crowd her space, yet unwilling to remove himself from the moment. The engine remained silent, steam curling in wisps around their feet, and for a fleeting second, Nathan wondered if this chance encounter was more than coincidence, if fate had twisted the night to bring them together. Clara looked up, meeting his gaze, and the intensity of her concern made his chest tighten, awareness of her humanity and the warmth she exuded breaking through the armor he carried for so long. "You have a steady hand," he said finally, voice low but deliberate. "I did not expect that." She smiled faintly, brushing wet strands from her eyes, a spark of something unspoken passing between them, and Nathan felt an unfamiliar pull, a recognition of courage and goodness that he had rarely encountered. Then a distant sound, tires squealing on wet pavement, a vehicle moving too fast, drew both their attentions, and Clara instinctively stepped in front of Nathan, positioning herself as though she could shield him from the unknown. His hand brushed hers, not as a command, but as a silent acknowledgement, the touch sending a subtle current of trust between them. For a brief moment, the storm and city traffic faded into the background, leaving only the two of them suspended in this tense equilibrium, a fragile connection forged from necessity and bravery. Clara glanced at her watch, noting how quickly time had passed, and then at Nathan, whose posture had softened imperceptibly. The rigid lines of authority relaxed as he absorbed the reassurance she offered. "They will be here soon," she said, voice steady, eyes scanning the street for any sign of interruption. He nodded once, approving her initiative, the acknowledgement of her competence marking the beginning of an unspoken alliance. As the minutes ticked by, they worked in tandem, Clara coordinating with her phone, directing the approaching tow truck, Nathan monitoring the street, alert to every sound and shadow, each moment layering tension and mutual respect. The storm around them raged on, yet inside this shared space, an unvoiced understanding grew, a sense that their lives had intersected in a way neither could have predicted. And when the tow truck finally rounded the corner, headlights cutting through the night, Nathan caught Clara's eye once more, noting the steadiness of her gaze and the unexpected calm she brought into the chaos, and he realized that the night had shifted irreversibly, that something important had begun between them, something that could not be undone, as the city and Rain continued to witness the start of a story neither had seen coming. The tow truck arrived with a low hum of its engine, lights reflecting off the wet asphalt as Nathan Blackwell stepped aside, letting Clara Bennett guide the driver through the details. She spoke with confidence, issuing clear instructions that the man followed without hesitation, her voice cutting through the relentless rainfall. Nathan watched, noting the calm precision in her movements, the way she balanced efficiency with genuine concern, not just for him, but for the world around her. Her hands moved deftly over the straps securing the vehicle, ensuring everything was stable before she stepped back to assess the situation. He noticed the faint line of determination on her face, how her jaw tightened slightly when she concentrated, the subtle crease in her brow that revealed both focus and worry. The storm had soaked her completely, yet she did not falter, and Nathan felt an unexpected pull, a mixture of admiration and intrigue that he had not allowed himself in years. The tow truck driver nodded to her, confirming that they were ready, and she stepped aside, glancing up at Nathan with an encouraging smile, a gesture so small yet profoundly human in its warmth. Nathan inclined his head slightly, acknowledging her efforts without words, the silent exchange heavier than any dialogue could be. He had spent his life calculating every risk, every interaction, yet in this moment, Clara's presence disrupted his usual certainty, a reminder that control could be shared without loss of authority. He followed her as she led the way back to the sidewalk, hands tucked into the pockets of her coat, water dripping from her hair and sleeves, each droplet reflecting the city lights like miniature stars. Nathan kept pace, his gait measured, yet unconsciously attuned to hers, the rhythm of her steps grounding him amidst the chaos of the storm. A sudden gust of wind pushed rain across the street, and Clara shielded the stroller with her coat, eyes flicking briefly to his, a silent acknowledgement that they were in this together, however briefly. Nathan felt the tension ease slightly, the weight of his usual vigilance softening as they moved in tandem toward the tow truck. Once they reached the vehicle, Clara coordinated smoothly with the driver again, and Nathan observed, noting her capacity to adapt, to respond under pressure with composure and foresight. He realized that the night, initially a source of frustration and delay, had become a crucible revealing qualities in Clara he had never expected to find in a stranger. When the vehicle was finally secured, Clara stepped back, brushing rain from her sleeves, and Nathan's gaze lingered on her, recognizing both the strength and warmth she exuded, qualities he had long admired from a distance but rarely allowed himself to acknowledge openly. The rain continued to fall, the city a blur of reflections and light, and as Nathan opened the driver's side door and stepped inside, he realized that this encounter, brief as it had been, had altered something fundamental in the rhythm of his night, perhaps in his life, and as the tow truck pulled away, he could not help but glance at Clara one more time, noting the steady confidence in her posture, the unwavering kindness in her eyes, and knowing that their paths had intersected in a way that could not be undone. As the tow truck disappeared around the corner, Nathan Blackwell remained in his SUV, engine purring softly as rain continued to streak down the windshield. He watched Clara Bennett gather her stroller and belongings, the droplets glistening in the streetlights, and he realized how seamlessly she moved through the world despite the chaos around her. Every gesture, from the careful placement of the stroller to the subtle adjustments of her wet coat, spoke of a life built on resilience and responsibility. Nathan stepped out, his shoes splashing lightly in the shallow puddles, and walked toward her, careful not to startle, but unable to resist the pull drawing him closer. Clara glanced up, and in that brief moment, the air between them thickened with unspoken acknowledgement. "I should walk you to your car," he said, voice even, yet carrying the weight of concern that she had not asked for but seemed to accept. They moved together along the slick sidewalk, each step in rhythm with the falling rain, each glance a silent conversation. Clara's eyes flicked toward him occasionally, assessing, cautious yet unafraid, and Nathan found himself noting the determination etched into her posture, the quickness of her mind as she scanned the street for potential hazards. The city around them was a blur of neon reflections and passing headlights, but their focus remained narrow, intimate in scope despite the distance and chaos of the night. At a cross street, Clara paused, looking at Nathan with a small, tentative smile, and he caught the shift in her demeanor, the way her shoulders relaxed slightly, the tension of the storm and their shared experience giving way to trust. "Thank you," she said softly, not needing to explain further, and Nathan simply nodded, a rare smile ghosting across his face, acknowledgement without pretense. The quiet was punctuated by the soft splash of tires from distant vehicles, the rhythmic hiss of rain, and the distant hum of the city that neither of them fully registered. They continued, side by side, until they reached her car parked under a flickering streetlight, its surface slick and reflecting the shimmering glow of traffic above. Clara opened the door, hands gripping the wheel for balance, and Nathan observed the careful precision of her movements, noting once again the balance of strength and care she exhibited in every action. She glanced at him, green eyes meeting the intensity of his own, and the briefest nod passed between them, a silent agreement that the night had altered something fundamental. Nathan turned back toward his SUV, then hesitated, hand resting lightly on the door handle, reluctant to leave the shared space of understanding they had forged. Clara noticed the pause, the almost imperceptible shift in his posture, and smiled faintly, a mix of reassurance and acknowledgement. As Nathan finally slid into his seat and started the engine, the soft hum of the car blending with the rain, he allowed himself a moment to reflect, the encounter with Clara Bennett lingering in his thoughts with a clarity that defied the chaos of the storm. He could not yet define the feeling, but he knew it was significant, an unspoken beginning that would shape the hours to come. The night stretched ahead, wet and uncertain, but Nathan was acutely aware that a single act of courage and kindness had shifted the balance of the evening, and in that shift lay the possibility of something neither had anticipated, a story just beginning to unfold as the rain continued its endless descent. Nathan Blackwell navigated the slick streets carefully, the SUV's tires sending thin sprays of water across the asphalt as Clara Bennett walked beside him, her stroller steady and unshaken despite the slick pavement. The city around them was alive with reflections, neon lights bouncing off puddles and the occasional honk of distant traffic, yet within this small bubble, the storm and noise faded into background static. Nathan observed Clara with an intensity he had not allowed himself before, noting the subtle confidence in her step, the way she adjusted her coat to keep herself and the child dry, and the calm assurance with which she handled every small obstacle along the sidewalk. Her determination was quiet but palpable, radiating from her posture and movements in a way that made him keenly aware of the difference between her world and his own, a life shaped by calculation and authority versus one shaped by necessity and care. He kept pace without speaking, letting her set the rhythm, allowing the storm to wash away the usual layers of control he carried. Clara glanced up at him once, green eyes meeting his dark gaze, a small smile playing at her lips as though acknowledging the strange trust that had grown in the minutes they had spent together. Nathan's hand hovered near the door handle, a subconscious gesture of readiness. Yet his attention was entirely on her, on the subtle cues of her body language, the quiet grace in the way she balanced responsibility and presence. The stroller rattled slightly over a raised section of the curb, and Clara adjusted it instinctively, her hands steady, eyes scanning ahead, never faltering. Nathan took in the scene with a rare stillness, the storm acting as both shield and spotlight, emphasizing the details he would normally overlook. The curve of her brow as she concentrated, the soft sigh when she thought she had successfully navigated the uneven pavement, the glint of water on her hair catching the ambient light in fleeting sparks. A gust of wind pushed rain across the street, and Nathan instinctively stepped closer to provide shelter, his shoulder brushing lightly against her arm, a protective presence that she acknowledged with a nod rather than words. The moment held, stretched by the rhythmic patter of the storm and the city sounds fading in and out, and Nathan realized that the connection formed in this brief walk was more than a fleeting encounter. It was a shift, a recalibration of awareness and priority that had been unthinkable hours before. They reached Clara's parked car at last, and she paused to secure the stroller, ensuring it was safe before turning to face him fully. Nathan noticed the subtle relaxation in her shoulders, the steadiness of her breath, and the small sense of relief in her eyes. He nodded once, a silent affirmation of her efforts and resilience, and she responded with a faint smile, an acknowledgement of mutual understanding. The rain continued its relentless descent, painting the streets in wet brushstrokes of color and light, and as Nathan opened his SUV door and settled back behind the wheel, he allowed himself a rare moment to reflect on the sequence of events, on how a single act of courage and attention had shifted the tone of his night. The realization that Clara Bennett, a woman navigating her own challenges with poise and grace, had become an unexpected anchor in the storm settled quietly in his mind, setting the stage for the hours yet to unfold as the SUV's headlights cut through the rain and they each moved into the uncertain path ahead, linked by circumstance, curiosity, and an unspoken sense of shared purpose. Nathan Blackwell watched as Clara Bennett carefully secured her child into the car seat, her hands steady despite the dampness of the night and the chill in the air. The rain continued to fall in relentless sheets, turning the city streets into rivers of reflected neon and streetlights. Yet within this small space, the chaos seemed to fade, leaving only the two of them in their shared rhythm. He noted the meticulous way she checked every strap, every latch, the efficiency and care in her movements that revealed a life managed with both responsibility and grace. Nathan stepped closer, careful not to impose, yet unable to resist the instinct to ensure she was untroubled. "You handle everything remarkably well," he said, his voice low but carrying an edge of genuine admiration. Clara glanced up at him, her green eyes reflecting the glow of the rain-slicked streets, and for a moment, the storm outside felt suspended, the world narrowing to their interaction. "It is what I must do," she replied quietly, a note of pride and quiet resilience in her tone, neither boastful nor seeking recognition. Nathan nodded once, recognizing her dedication, the contrast between her grounded reality and his own life of calculated control, creating a tension that was both unsettling and intriguing. They moved toward the sidewalk together, Nathan walking alongside her with careful attention, his presence a silent assurance rather than a directive, observing the way she navigated the puddles and uneven curb edges with the stroller. The rain continued to drench them, yet neither faltered, and Nathan realized the ease with which she balanced multiple responsibilities, managing herself and her child with a focus and strength that he had rarely witnessed in anyone outside his inner circle. A distant horn blared, water splashing across the sidewalk as cars passed, but their bubble remained intact, a temporary space where time slowed and observation replaced reaction. Clara's glance flicked to Nathan again, a small smile, fleeting but full of meaning, acknowledging the silent recognition that had passed between them, and he allowed himself to respond with a subtle shift in posture, an unspoken connection forming in the midst of the storm. When they reached her car, she paused, checking the doors and seat belts, ensuring everything was secure, and Nathan observed with a rare attentiveness, noting the care and consistency in her actions, the steadiness in a chaotic night. He finally opened his SUV door, the interior dry and warm compared to the exterior downpour, and stepped inside. Yet even as he started the engine, his attention remained on Clara, watching her prepare to depart, aware that the night had introduced a shift, a moment of unexpected connection that neither of them could have anticipated. The city around them pulsed with movement and light. Yet within Nathan's gaze lingered the image of her composure and resolve, the small gestures that revealed character and strength, and he understood that this encounter, brief as it was, had altered the course of his evening, leaving a lingering awareness of someone who had stepped into his world not by invitation, but by courage. A presence that would not be easily forgotten as the night stretched on and the rain continued to fall, softening the edges of the city and their lives, linking them in a quiet, unspoken understanding that would resonate beyond the storm. Nathan Blackwell parked his SUV a few blocks away, the rain still falling in a steady curtain, droplets splashing and creating tiny ripples in the puddles along the curb. He stepped out, coat collar raised against the wind, and watched Clara Bennett unlock her car, her movements deliberate and precise as she balanced the stroller and her belongings. The city was alive around them, the glow of neon signs and the reflections in wet asphalt casting a cinematic haze over the streets. Nathan approached, careful not to startle her, and his eyes took in the way she shifted weight from one foot to the other, the careful glances over her shoulder, the steady breathing that revealed both caution and composure. He noted the meticulous care with which she ensured the child was secure, the attention to every detail a testament to her unwavering responsibility. "I cannot thank you enough for your help tonight," Nathan said, voice low, carrying a tone of sincerity that was rarely directed at anyone outside his immediate circle. Clara looked up, green eyes meeting his gaze, and offered a small, calm smile, acknowledging his words without needing elaboration. The quiet between them was filled with the rhythmic sound of rain, the distant hum of traffic, and the subtle rustle of clothing and equipment, a sensory landscape that emphasized their shared presence. Nathan gestured toward the sidewalk, indicating that they should continue walking, and Clara moved with measured steps, her focus split between the stroller, the street, and the man beside her. He kept pace, attentive to her rhythm, noticing the subtle ways she adapted to uneven curbs and shallow puddles, the small adjustments of her coat, and the way her hair clung damply to her face. Nathan's awareness of her movements and demeanor created a tension that was both compelling and unfamiliar, a sense of observation that was deeply personal yet restrained, conscious of boundaries and propriety. As they walked, the light from a nearby street lamp caught her expression, highlighting determination and quiet resilience, and Nathan felt a subtle shift within himself, a recognition of qualities that extended beyond the immediate circumstances, qualities that spoke to character, courage, and composure under pressure. They reached a corner where the streets opened into a broader avenue, and Clara paused, glancing toward Nathan, her eyes reflecting an unspoken acknowledgement of the night's events and the trust that had formed. Nathan inclined his head slightly, a gesture of understanding and respect, and she responded with a small nod before focusing again on the stroller and the path ahead. The rain persisted, falling in relentless sheets, yet the shared awareness between them seemed to create a protective bubble, a space where time slowed and observation replaced action. Nathan allowed himself to appreciate the strength and steadiness she exhibited, the balance of responsibility, care, and composure that had made the evening manageable, and he realized that the night had become a defining moment, a convergence of two worlds with a fragile, unspoken understanding now established. As Clara reached her car, securing the door and double-checking the child's safety, Nathan lingered for a brief moment, acknowledging silently the impact of her actions and the way she had reshaped the tone of his evening, aware that this encounter was not just an anomaly, but a subtle turning point as the city continued to pulse around them, wet and illuminated, leaving a sense of anticipation for what might follow. Nathan Blackwell watched from the SUV as Clara Bennett buckled her child into the car seat one last time, ensuring the straps were tight and the seat secure, her movements deliberate and steady despite the chill of the rain. He noticed the way her coat clung damply to her frame, the faint glint of water droplets on her hair catching the streetlight glow, and the calm precision in her eyes as she scanned the sidewalk for hazards. The city around them hummed with life, the neon lights reflecting off puddles and fractured colors. But Nathan's focus remained entirely on her, on the subtle confidence she carried, the way she balanced care with urgency, and the quiet determination that seemed to define every step she took. He stepped closer, careful to remain non-intrusive, yet aware of the weight of his presence, feeling the unusual pull of concern and admiration mixing in a way that was unfamiliar but not unwelcome. "You manage everything remarkably," he said, voice low but clear, carrying both observation and respect. Clara looked up at him, green eyes meeting his dark gaze, and offered a small, appreciative smile, acknowledging the statement without needing more. The rain pattered against the asphalt, the soft hiss of passing vehicles fading in the background, creating a rhythm that emphasized their shared focus. Nathan walked beside her, matching her pace, noting the small adjustments she made with the stroller over slick patches, the careful lifting of the wheels over uneven curbs, and the calm composure in her body language. Each step, each glance, reinforced the impression of responsibility and steadiness, a grounding presence that contrasted sharply with the world he typically commanded. They moved together in silence, the night stretching around them, rain painting everything in soft, distorted reflections, and Nathan allowed himself to absorb the details of her actions, realizing that the connection formed in this shared moment went beyond simple courtesy or assistance. Clara glanced at him, her expression carrying unspoken acknowledgement of the night's unfolding events, and Nathan responded with a subtle nod, an understanding that needed no words. As they approached her car, she ensured the child was secure once more, checking straps and adjusting the seat with practiced care, and Nathan observed, taking in the steadiness and clarity of her actions. He remained close, silently affirming her capability and presence, noting how natural she seemed in managing multiple responsibilities with grace under pressure. When Clara finally stepped back and surveyed the street, Nathan's gaze lingered on her, recognizing the quiet courage and diligence she displayed, a reminder that the night had introduced more than temporary assistance. It had established an awareness, a mutual recognition of skill, care, and presence that neither had anticipated. The rain continued to fall, steady and relentless, yet in that moment, the night seemed to slow, the city lights and reflections framing them, highlighting the subtle, unspoken bond that had begun to form, leaving Nathan aware that this encounter had created a foundation that could influence the hours and decisions yet to come, an unanticipated beginning to something that neither of them could have predicted. Nathan Blackwell watched Clara Bennett settle the stroller with a final, careful check of the straps, her movements calm yet deliberate, revealing a practiced ease with responsibility that drew his full attention. The rain had begun to lighten, the relentless patter softening into a steady drizzle that painted the city streets with reflective light, neon and amber merging into a kaleidoscope beneath the street lamps. He remained close, silently observing the way she adjusted the canopy over the stroller, ensuring her child was dry and comfortable, noting the small gestures that spoke of attentiveness and care. Nathan took a step back to give her space, yet his presence remained reassuring, a steadying anchor without words. Clara looked up briefly, catching his gaze, and there was a momentary spark of understanding, a recognition of shared experience forged in unexpected circumstances. Nathan's voice broke the quiet, low and measured. "You have a remarkable way of managing the unexpected," and Clara responded with a small nod, her eyes reflecting the glow of the streetlights, acknowledging both the observation and the subtle bond that had formed. They began walking toward the intersection, the city alive around them, wet asphalt shimmering under passing headlights, reflections twisting like liquid art. Nathan noticed the careful pacing of her steps, the slight lift of her foot to avoid puddles, the steadiness in her hands as she navigated the stroller, and he realized how completely composed she remained despite the unusual situation, the storm, and the late hour. The silence between them carried meaning, unspoken communication, the weight of trust forming with every measured step. A gentle breeze swept through, and Clara's hair flicked across her face, which she brushed back with a careful motion, eyes meeting Nathan's once more with quiet assurance. He could sense the subtle confidence she carried, the innate ability to respond with clarity and grace. And he felt a rare stillness settle over him, a recognition that this encounter had left an impression far beyond the immediate circumstances. As they reached the corner where the street widened into a broader avenue, Clara paused, glancing at Nathan, green eyes meeting his with a mixture of curiosity and unspoken acknowledgement. Nathan offered a subtle nod, a gesture that conveyed both respect and recognition of the evening's events, and she responded with a slight smile, the tension of the storm and the earlier uncertainty easing into a shared sense of calm. The rain continued in light patterns, the city alive yet somehow softened by the ongoing drizzle, reflections dancing across puddles, street signs, and parked cars. Nathan stepped closer to his vehicle, taking a moment to observe Clara one last time, noting the steadiness in her posture, the quiet strength in her actions, and the warmth that had subtly emerged through her composure. As he opened the SUV door and settled inside, he allowed himself a moment to reflect on the night, the extraordinary way a single act of courage and care had shifted the tone of his evening, creating a bridge between two very different worlds. The rain softened further, the city stretching out beyond them, yet Nathan could not remove his attention from Clara Bennett, recognizing that the encounter had left a lasting mark, a connection that would linger in the hours and decisions to come, an unspoken beginning whose story was only just unfolding.